Hey guys, on today's episode, we're going to talk about unicorns, growth hacking, and minimum viable products. And I know that might sound like an intro you'd hear on TechCrunch, but hang with me because this is really important stuff for bootstrappers and independent entrepreneurs. Money isn't the point. A business should be about lifestyle, impact, and meaning. And you can still earn a ridiculous amount of money without sacrificing any of that. But you need to set your priorities. And that, to me, is what a lifestyle business is all about. Up first today, David Heinemeier Hansson, or DHH as he's known online, dropped a bomb of an article last week. DHH is co-founder of Basecamp, formerly 37 Signals, and creator of Ruby on Rails. And he is known as a big proponent of bootstrapped or real businesses as opposed to venture capital-backed startups. His latest article called Reconsider, which was actually written as a talk for Web Summit 2015, which is a tech conference, absolutely exploded on Medium last week with over 6,000 recommendations. In the article, DHH makes some scathing observations about venture capital and the San Francisco-based tech community that we hear so much about these days. In the article, he says, "Well, the reason I'm here is to remind you that maybe, just maybe, you too have a nagging, gagging sense that the current atmosphere of disruptomania isn't the only air a startup can breathe. That perhaps this zeal for disruption is not only crowding out other motives for doing a startup, but also can be downright poisonous for everyone here and the rest of the world. Part of the problem seems to be that nobody these days is content to merely put their dent in the universe. No, they have to fucking own the universe. It's not enough to be in the market, they have to dominate it. It's not enough to serve customers, they have to capture them." He goes on to compare the venture capital ladder to a multi-level marketing scheme. And he's outrageous as usual, but I don't disagree. Venture capital really is greed, the sole purpose of which is to turn $1 into 10. And when you accept venture capital for your business, you accept this limited view of what business should be, in that it's a vehicle for making relatively few people really rich. I personally have seen venture capital ruin otherwise fantastic business ideas in the pursuit of unrealistic growth expectations and the requirement that you raise the next round of financing. But the real point of David's article isn't simply to bash venture capitalists. He's actually asking us to question our motives as entrepreneurs. In describing his own business, DHH says, "I'm going to pull out another trite saying here. It just feels like honest work, simple, honest work. I make a good product, you pay me good money for it. We don't even need big words like monetization strategy to describe that transaction because it is so plain and simple, even my 3-year-old son can understand it. I wanted to work for myself, walk to my own beat, chart my own path, call it like I saw it, and not worry about what dudes in suits thought of that. All the cliches of independence that sound so quaint until you have a board meeting questioning why you aren't raising more, burning faster, and growing at supersonic speeds yesterday." As I said at my Pioneer Nation talk last month, how you build your business matters as much as what you build. Building a business can become the foundation of an incredible life and this deep sense of fulfillment and self-sufficiency that you can't get from anything else. But you have to set your priorities. Letting greed and the pursuit of ever faster growth dictate your decisions won't guarantee financial success, and it definitely won't lead to happiness. Anyway, this is a fantastic article. I highly recommend that you give it a read. And you can find the link to this article and all the other links that we'll talk about in today's episode at corbettbar.com/10. That's CORBETTBARR.com/10. Now let's talk about another startup concern, which is called growth hacking. If you're not familiar with the term, Sean Ellis in 2010 defined a growth hacker by saying, a growth hacker is a person whose true north is growth. Most big startups have growth teams now, and a growth team is typically comprised of a cross-disciplinary team that involves marketing, product, engineering, and other things that can take on projects that should lead to growth for the company, either in terms of revenue or user growth or both. The problem with growth hacking is that it often focuses on short-term tactics that might sacrifice the longer-term health of a business. For example, you might choose to focus on advertising or SEO to grow your user base, only to find out later that those people aren't good for the long-term health of the company. Or more commonly, you might start to focus on growth or one specific growth tactic so much that you lose sight of the real value that your business needs to provide. And it could very well be that you would grow your company faster if you just focused on creating a better product in the first place. If you want to see what a functional and healthy growth team looks like, take a look at this talk that two members of the growth team at Intercom put together. This talk is called Growth Hacking is BS, and they focus really on the difference between short-term, nearsighted tactical growth versus long-term, sustainable, healthy growth. And there are some really great tips in here about onboarding and pricing strategies specifically. You can find a link to this talk again at corbettbar.com/10 with links to that talk and everything else that we're mentioning in the episode today. And finally today, let's talk about minimum viable products. You've probably heard the advice that when building your first product, you should really be aiming for a minimum viable version of that product. In other words, what is the smallest thing that you can put out in the world to see if customers really want it? The minimum viable product, or MVP, can be such a useful approach, but it's often misunderstood. We actually launched the first version of Fizzle as an MVP in just 7 weeks. But the key here is that the MVP is just a starting point. It's meant to be a conversation starter focused on fulfilling one specific need that your customers have. After launching your MVP, the real work begins. From there, you talk with your customers about what they like and don't like about your meager attempt, and you try to iterate quickly and improve your product as you go. This approach follows the Rome wasn't built in a day adage. You might have some grand vision for your product ultimately, but it's always going to take longer than you think to get there. The biggest risk that you face as an entrepreneur is spending many months or years even working on something only to find out customers don't really want it. So the MVP approach cuts this risk by helping you to get something out in the world as early as possible so that you can get that critical feedback from customers. But what does a good minimum viable product really look like? How many features should be in your MVP? How do you know when your first product is good enough to launch? To clear up some of these questions, I put together a list of 7 really simple minimum viable product ideas for your first product launch. These are concrete examples of how you would turn a big idea into a quick and dirty first version that you can get out there to lead to sales and feedback from your customers. For example, let's say you wanted to write a book. If you want to write a book, it's a huge undertaking. It might take you weeks and weeks or months and months of work. A shorter electronic book would be less work, but it would still be weeks and weeks before you got any feedback to know whether all that effort was warranted. So as an MVP, instead of writing the entire book and getting feedback after you're done, why not release your book one piece at a time, idea by idea, and get feedback along the way? This is partly how Intercom has created 3 great books on product development, customer engagement, and customer support. Some of the very best ideas and chapters in these books came directly from blog posts that appeared originally on the Inside Intercom blog. Ebooks are created like this all the time. Darren Rouse of ProBlogger sells a book called 31 Days to Build a Better Blog, and that book originally appeared as individual blog posts that were written over a 31-day period. This is just one concrete example of how you might turn a big idea into a nice, tight, little minimum viable product. You can get the rest of my 7 simple ideas for first product MVPs. Just head to corbettbar.com/10 for the link to the full list of 7, along again with the other links that are mentioned in this episode. All right, that's it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for being here. If you liked this episode, subscribe or leave a comment. And in your comment, if you ask a question, I'll do my best to answer it in an upcoming episode. All right, that's it for now. Until next time, have a great week. Get all of today's links and many more articles and resources for lifestyle business builders just like you in one convenient, curated weekly email. Head over to lifestylebusinessweekly.com and sign up for free. I'll send you 1 email a week, including a link to the latest episode of this show, new blog posts from me, and resources that will help you make more progress towards building a business that matters. That's lifestylebusinessweekly.com.